Well, the powerlifting gods sure have been spoiling us lately. Yesterday, I made the grand claim that the 83 kilo flight was the greatest powerlifting flight we had ever seen. Well, I think that lasted all of 24 hours until today when we saw the 93s and the 105s battle it out. Many of the 93s, but also what Anthony McNaughton did was absolutely insane. So in this video, I'm going to go through the 6 reasons why this was the actual greatest powerlifting flight of all time. It was close between this and the 83s. I'm honestly struggling to separate the two. Let me know what you think in the comments. Okay, so reason number 1, the 93 GOAT does it again. Jonathan Kaiko comes back and reclaims the top spot on the 93s, not just in the US, but in the world, with a 919.5 kilogram total, which is an American record. It's an unofficial world record, 2 kilos above Emil Krastev's number that he set at Sheffield. This is the biggest total we've ever seen from a tested 93 kilo lifter. And who better to do it than Jonathan Kaiko? I predicted him to win, and boy, did he live up to expectations and then some. He looked very strong on the day. You can see there, his 310 squat looked good. It was probably his hardest lift of the day. That 252 record bench, 7 kilos above his world record, looked very easy. And that last deadlift of 357.5 as well looked like he had more in the tank had he have needed to load more. He took perfect attempt selections on the day, Mr. Perfect as always, went 9 for 9 in classic Jonathan Kaiko fashion, and gets the win, and reasserts himself as the best 93 kilo lifter in the world after over a year away from the sport. Healed up injuries, came back, and boy did it pay off big time. Absolutely crazy. We saw him do what he does best, which was essentially be the most clutch lifter of all time, the most clutch powerlifter ever. He seemingly always goes 9 for 9, always rises to the occasion, the most battle-tested lifter ever. And I mean, if you were going to, betting on anyone in this 93 kilo battle would have been risky, but if you had to bet on someone, it would have been Kaiko, because he comes through more often than not. And this is the strongest version of Jonathan Kaiko we've seen, which is a scary prospect for the rest of the 93s in the world. Reason number 2, a 900 kilo podium for the 93s. Now 900 seems to be the hot number in powerlifting. We just saw it yesterday fall in the 83s with Joe Borenstein hitting 900, and I talked about how crazy that was. I'm actually going to talk about how crazy Anthony McNaughton's 979 was in a similar way, so stay tuned for that. But a 900 kilo podium in the 93s is wild. People were saying we might see this. Personally, I thought we would see 1, maybe 2 lifters go over 900. The fact we did see a 900 podium exceeded my expectations, and that is a crazy mark considering 900 was only broken for the first time like half a year ago in August last year when Gavin Aiden first did it. So obviously you had Kaiko win, then you had Petrie and Dominique Fuqua, who was a bit of a dark horse for podium, finish in 3rd place with 900 even. So again, similar to what I did in the last video, this was the current top 10 active 93 ranking in the world. And after today, again, similar to the 83s, we saw quite a bit of shake-up. So obviously Jonathan Kaiko moved up, as I said, to reclaim top spot. Brandon Petrie, 902.5 in that 4th position. Gavin Aiden he finished in 4th, doing 890 plus. However, he didn't best his 901. Classic Gavin Aiden fashion, going all in, all in for the win. Dominique Fuqua, obviously with that 900, now in 6th. Demetrius Smith moving up in the rankings with 880. What a day he had. And Brandon Jones as well, moving into the top 10. A fantastic day for him. Yeah, so many contenders in 93s. It was hard to know where to look. Every single lifter was up there. So even in the B group, we had Jack Reynolds, who's been hitting on crazy lifts in training, 18 or 19 years old. He went 825, I believe. Not quite the best day for him, considering how crazy his training is, but he's definitely one to watch in the future. And Jordan McKinley in the B group, 857.5, which was good enough for, I believe, 7th place overall, despite missing his 3rd squat and 3rd deadlift. So I anticipate he'll be in prime time for the remainder of his career with how strong he looked. But a lot of massive lifters, you can see there, we did see absolutely massive totals, including the best ever, And you can see how special a 900 podium is, given how rare 900 is. And like I said, all those 900 kilo totals, Gavin's 901, Gustav and Emil, like that was literally only done at Sheffield, and Gavin's last year in August, like I was saying. So 900 podium is very special for the 93s. The third reason, the 93 contenders just would not miss. It is extremely rare to see a battle like this where you have so many lifters neck and neck and not one of them was blinking. We hardly saw any misses until the final round of deadlifts. In fact, after subtotals, this was the current standing. In the italics is your pound conversions. So after squats and bench, this is what the subtotals were looking like. And there was not a single miss. Actually, correction. Dominic Fuqua missed his second squat on depth, came back, went up 5 kilos and got it on his third, which was a good call. And Carl De Leon had a seemingly catastrophic failure on his opening squat, but then he came back and hit his second and his third. So we saw a few misses, but everyone hit their third squats and everyone got all 3 benches out of this group of 7 lifters right here. And this was a 7-way fight for podium. At that point, you could not count out anyone, and there were several lifters gunning for podium at this point as well. Now, Jamar Royster was the one lifter who we did see have not the best day on squat, obviously attempting the national record 350 plus twice and missing it on his second and third, and that essentially got him out of podium contention because he needed those kilos on his big lift, which was his squat. But aside from Jamar having an unfortunate day, everyone else was looking on point. And in fact, that continued in deadlifts because after the second round of deadlifts, this is what we saw in the standings. Again, not a single miss in the first 2 deadlifts from these 7 guys. And already you had Petrie and Jonathan Kaiko in the 900s. Gavin Aiden was 891.5, and you knew he was going to load up big on his third, which he did. Dominic Fuqua and Demetrius Smith in the 880s placing themselves very well. Brandon Jones and Carl De Leon in the 850s. So again, leading into the final round of deadlifts, this is where we were at, and it was not clear at all not just who would win, who would podium, but what the order of the top 7 would be. And also, Jordan McKinley's total from the B group, or not in prime time, 857.5 was also in the mix there. So yeah, very rare to see such a high hit rate when you have so many lifters going head to head, which made it that much more crazy to watch. We saw less misses than we saw in the 83 kilo flight. And speaking of the final round of deadlifts, reason number 4, the deadlift drama. Actually going to take it back and look at those 2 massive second deadlifts we saw from Demetrius Smith and Brandon Petrie. So Demetrius Smith pulled 360 with shocking speed, just shy of 800 pounds, and this gave him that 880 kilo total on his second attempt. Now he did come back and load up big, which I'll show you that as well. But this was enough to leave him in 5th place for the day. Then Brandon Petrie equaling his personal best with this 372.5. And again, that moved insane. That is the quickest I've seen Petrie move that. He was looking mighty strong the whole day. They all were. That's how insane this was. Everyone was looking so strong. But that gave Petrie 902.5 on his second, putting him in a very good spot. Then we go into the final round of deadlift. So Brandon Jones came up, added 20 kilos to his second with a 332.5 pull for an 877.5 kilo total, which was enough for 6th place on the day, which is very impressive given how strong everyone was. And for someone who's fresh out of the juniors and still a junior, I believe, actually, he is one to watch without a doubt, now that he's in the 870s and in the top 10 active 93s. Then we saw Dominic Fuqua, who, as I mentioned, had that earlier miss on his second squat, but otherwise was looking good, loaded up 355 and close to a limit lift, but he stayed strong throughout. He got it done, perfect attempt call on the day, and that was enough to give him that 900 kilo total, which placed him on the podium. And that was the talk going in, was there would be a lot of opportunities for podium finishes, given that the big 3, so Jonathan Kaiko, Petrie, and Gavin Aiden, all were going to go all in for the win. And Dominic Fuqua capitalized, paced himself very well, and hit a 900 kilo total, which if he had hit that just half a year ago, he would have been one of the first to ever do it. So yeah, absolutely a world-class total from Dominic Fuqua, and podium finish here, but in any other competition in the world that would have been enough for the win, most likely. Then Gavin Aiden. So Gavin Aiden had a classic Gavin Aiden day where we saw the controversy on the squats. He got red lighted his third, then he got overturned, as it should have, because I thought it was a good lift. But it wouldn't be a Gavin Aiden flight without getting at least one jury intervention on squats. And then he burned his ships again on his deadlifts. He took a 30 kilo jump from his second, which was already a 25 kilo jump from his first. 355. He already locked up 891.5 on his second. A 30 kilo jump would have been 921.5 for the biggest total we'd ever seen. And he came so close. In fact, for a split second there, he did lock it out. Unfortunately, though, it just wasn't quite there. His grip couldn't hold. So close. I just wonder if he would have loaded 2.5 to 5 kilos less. But then again, Jonathan Kaiko did 919.5, so 2.5 kilos less wouldn't have been enough. So yeah, I mean, he potentially had a few more left on bench that he could have squeezed out, but got to feel for Gavin. He ends up off of podium, which, I mean, for him, it's always going to be first place or nothing, so I don't think finishing off podium is going to hurt him as much as just not winning will. I don't think a third or even a second place would be much consolation with how Gavin Aiden is, but so close. Similar to 83s, we saw a lot of lifters come very close. 357.5 was then loaded up for Jonathan Kaiko, 788 pounds, which he loaded up for the win. 919.5 this gave him. Moved very well, and Jonathan Kaiko the whole way through had more kilos on pretty much everything. Like I said, squat seemed to be the only lift that was somewhat close to a limit lift for him. Everything else looked pretty damn smooth. 919.5, and yeah, perfect attempt call in a day. Big PB for him, over 20 kilos above what he'd ever done before, and that gave him first place. Then Demetrius Smith took a huge jump from his second, 382.5, and this would have given him 902.5 for not just a podium, but a second place finish. And just like Gavin Aiden, he came so close. It wasn't a grip failure as much as he just got stuck in those last couple of inches right before lockout. But yeah, it was the right call, because he had to load up 902.5 to take podium, and that happened to be what would have given him his second place. So it was a good call for him on the day. 22.5 kilo jump. I reckon next time he might have that again above the world record deadlift that would have been. And speaking of being above the world record deadlift, next came Brandon Petrie, 389.5. He loaded up for the win. For reference, the IPF world record, I believe, is 373, held by Chance Mitchell, or 373.5 maybe. The overall deadlift world record is 383, also held by Chance Mitchell. So this would have been far above either of those. 389.5 would have given him 919.5 to match Kaiko's total and win on bodyweight. Would have given him the win. And again, he came so close. He just couldn't get those hips through in those final centimeters, and the grip gave out while he was trying to do it. Again, he could not have come any closer. And it just goes to show Jonathan Kaiko paced himself perfect. The game plan worked out perfect, because if Petrie would have been forced to pull anything less than that, he very well could have got it because of how smooth that looked. And we knew Petrie's deadlift was strong, but I don't think anyone expected it to be this strong going into this championships. 389.5, so close for Petrie. Ends up finishing in second place still, with a PB total still in the 900s, but yeah, disappointment for all those top 93s who wanted to take the spot. But man, Kaiko is a very hard guy to beat. But what a round of deadlifts that was. Crazy. Okay, the fifth reason why this was the best flight ever and better than the 83s, because of the 105s, namely Anthony McNaughton. This total might get overshadowed because it wasn't done in a direct head-to-head against Keenan Lee, because he lifted earlier in the day. But what we witnessed from Anthony McNaughton, in my opinion, is almost as impressive, or you could argue is as impressive, maybe not as, but almost as impressive as Joey B's 900. He totaled 979 kilos. Okay, again, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself because of how excited I've been by these, but a lot of shouting was done at the TV today as well. But first, let's take a step back and look at who he had to beat. So Keenan Lee was lifting because he didn't have a qualifying total. He was flying in from South Korea. He was lifting in the morning session. So Anthony McNaughton knew exactly what he would have needed to do to win. And Keenan Lee, make no mistake about it, had a solid day. He PB'd his total. 958.5 is where he ended up, courtesy of this massive 368.5 kilo deadlift. He went 8 for 9. He attempted 373, I believe, in his last deadlift, but couldn't quite get it. So that was his only miss of the day. But he squeezed out about as much kilos as he had in him. And like I said, the strongest Keenan Lee has ever been on the platform, 958.5. And again, Keenan Lee was the one going into this making grand claims about, his honeymoon being in Europe because he's going to go to Worlds in Sheffield. And I predicted, so I made a video about Anthony McNaughton that he was the most underrated powerlifter today with how strong he was. And I predicted it was going to be Keenan. But even I didn't expect how much stronger Anthony was than Keenan on this day. How much stronger Anthony was than any 105. He made it look easy and he won by a long way. Ultimately, I don't think it would have made a difference if Keenan had competed head-to-head on the same day. I think looking at their performances, it was clear Anthony McNaughton was the strongest 105. Not just on that day, but in history. Anthony McNaughton's performance. A 365 kilo squat, over 800 pounds, and his lifts, you will notice here, all looked very easy. That squat looked like he had more in the tank if he had needed it. He took a 245 kilo bench, which for reference is 11 kilos above the 105 IPF world record that was just set at Euros by Vladimir and Barsi. So that's a IPF world record over the IPF world record bench unofficially. And this 369 kilo deadlift for half a kilo more than Keenan Lee's American record he pulled earlier. And just like his squat and bench, how easy was this? Going into this, on subtotal, Anthony had the edge over Keenan, but Keenan historically was the bigger puller. After today, Keenan is not the bigger deadlifter, Anthony is. In fact, Anthony, his 369 looked a lot easier than Keenan Lee's 368.5 did. And he was so strong today. In fact, Anthony McNaughton hit the total he needed. He hit 960, I believe, on his 960 on his second deadlift, which was already enough to beat Keenan. So he had a lift to spare to take the American record from Keenan, and he did so. 979 kilos with lifts looking like RPE 8 is absolutely monstrous. And that makes him the strongest 105 in history by quite a long way. Not just because of how big the total is, but because of how easy it looked and how much more kilos he had. 1,000 is there for him on potentially even today, but 1,000 kilos in the future is not far off for him at all. So similar to what I did with the 83s and 93s, here is the list of the top 10 active 105 lifters who are currently lifting. This was going into the championships, and you can see Keenan Lee added a kilo to his best ever total there. Ashton Ruska's 960.5 is number 1, even though the best he's done in the IPF is about 20 kilos below that. 960.5 he did in the USAPL. And after today, that's what he now looks like. Anthony McNaughton is number 1 by almost 20 kilos. And Keenan Lee improved his PB by a kilo, but it wasn't enough. And honestly, he could have improved his PB by 20 kilos and it still wouldn't have been enough with how strong Anthony was. So yeah, this makes Anthony McNaughton far and away the strongest 105. Ashton Ruska's best ever number that he's hit is 968, which was 105 point something. So even if you give Ashton his best ever total as a 110 lifter in the USAPL, Anthony McNaughton is still over 10 kilos above that. So yeah, and Anatoly is obviously the IPF world record holder, and he is almost 40 kilos below what Anthony just did. So it is not close by any means. And let's look at, similar to what I did with the 83s, to put into context how crazy these totals are. 979 is what he hit. Let's look at the IPF World's winning totals from its inception in 2012 till the current day in the 105s. Needless to say, Anthony would have annihilated every single 105 year that we've seen in the IPF. If you look at the 120s, these are the 120 kilo class IPF World's winning totals. And again, 979 would have beaten every single one. In fact, 979 kilos beat the weight class above. So the IPF world record in the 120 kilo class is 978.5, held by Dennis Cornelius, set all the way back in 2016. Anthony McNaughton, with his 979, beat the world record of the weight class above. Now, I know Rondell Hunt exists, yes, and his unofficial world record is way beyond that. It's 10:45 and potentially more in, tomorrow when we see him compete. But still, to beat 978.5, that is the second biggest total we've ever seen at a 120 do. Dennis Cornelius and Bob Matthews also matched it at PA Nats last year. And if it weren't for Rondell, that would be the heaviest we've ever seen by a 120. Not only that, but that record set by Dennis Cornelius back in 2016 is one of the longest standing IPF world records. Stood for 9 years, going on 9 years now. Has been beaten in the IPF. It will once Rondell makes his way back, and potentially by a few other lifters, Lonzo and some others creeping up on it. But the fact that he got unofficially beaten by a 105 is mental. So yeah, Anthony beating the weight class above, definitely something to be said about how epic that is. And like I said, he would have won every single 120 kilo world title. Let's look at the 120 plus kilo class, the super heavyweights. And you'll see here that there are quite a few years where he would have won with this 979. We're looking at not one, but two weight classes above him now. Now, not to mention that the gap between the 105s and 120s is the biggest gap between weight classes, aside from the super heavyweights. It's a 15 kilo jump, over 30 pounds. That's a massive jump in body weight. He would have won all the 120s, like I said. He even would have won 4 world titles in the 120 pluses with this performance. And we're not just comparing him to guys that are, 20, 30, 40, 50 kilos. No, we're comparing him against guys that are weighing up to 170, 180 plus kilos. And there are years where he would have beaten them all. In fact, even in the years where he wouldn't have won with 979, he still would have podiumed damn near every single year, including at last year's Worlds, and he would have finished no worse than 4th in the 120 pluses against people that outweigh him on the low end by 50 kilos, on the high end by 80 kilos. And he's right there with them in the top 4 at worst, and podiuming most years, including 3 out of the last 4, and even last year finishing in 3rd place he would have with 979. So that's my attempt to put into perspective how crazy that total is. And yeah, in a championships that has had so many epic performances, it's very easy for certain things to get overlooked. And this is one total that I hope is not going to get overlooked, because yeah, this is right up there with Joey B hitting 900. Obviously, it just doesn't have the same whole round number. I guess 1000 would be the closest thing to the 900. But yeah, 979, Anthony McNaughton. I was picking him as the underdog, but even I was surprised by how strong he looked. So there we go, PA Nats, the 93 kilo flight, as well as the 105s. Is it better than the 83s? I don't know, it's close. They're both so good. Tomorrow with the 120s and 120 pluses, I doubt it's going to hit the heights that we saw in the last 2 days. And also the 66ers was epic, needless to mention. I'll, have a takeaways video from the whole championships coming, where I'll discuss all those weight classes, focusing on the ones that I haven't already, being the 83s, 93s, and 105s. But yeah, let me know what you think. Which day did you prefer at PA Nats 2025?